All right. Welcome, everyone, to the final HFPod on tour of summer 2021. I can't believe we made it. The technology worked. Our guests showed up. We had a great summer talking through fish here every day at 1 o'clock Eastern. Thank you so much for every one of you who has hung out with us, who has listened, who has commented, who has followed along. It's been so awesome. I am coming off of, as you can probably tell by my voice, which is reduced by about 45% right now, a 3 night fish run, an incredible Sunday fish show that I'm really excited to talk about. And, just overall, just kind of beaming from this whole summer tour. My name is Brian Brinkman. I'm part of Osiris Media. I'm going to bring on screen here in a second my co host, Jonathan Hart, who we've been doing these weekly breakdowns, which have been so much fun. We're going to actually turn today's live episode, into tomorrow's podcast as well. So listen here. You can also listen tomorrow when we post this on the feed. We're going to do a big breakdown of the last week in fish, Shoreline, Dix, the final show of the tour, kind of where it all falls in the larger tour. What does it all mean? All those big, heady questions as we go into this. Before we do that, though, really quickly, I just want to give a huge shout out to our presenting sponsor, Shift Genuine Cannabis. They've been with us since the start of this tour. They've been absolutely amazing. We want to thank everyone at Shift Genuine Cannabis and thank all of you who came out to the Shift tent yesterday to see the live show that we did with Tom. Scott Marks was there. Trey's guitar rig was there. Benji Eisen was there. We had the Dude of Life and Andy Greenberg playing some music. It was a super fun time. It was great to meet a bunch of people right outside of Dick's right before the show. We're going to announce it here in a second, but we did announce yesterday the winner of the Fish Vegas contest. So 2 tickets to Fish's October 30th and 31st shows in Las Vegas, plus $500 towards airfare and hotel accommodations. Pretty awesome. So we're going to announce that here in a second. We're also we have a ton of stuff that's going to be happening with Shift between now and the end of October when Fish concludes their fall tour. So keep an eye out for everything that we've got going on with them. I hope some of you out there as well were able to go to Golden Meds and pick up some fantastic bits of the Osiris strain because that was really awesome and really enjoyed that. Also want to give a shout out here to our media partner, Jambase. Jambase has been amazing for us. Thank you so much for all that you do to help support Osiris and help support everything that we do here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring Jonathan on right now. Jonathan.
Hey, Brian.
How are you, my man?
Probably more rested than you, although I was up pretty late watching some concerts this weekend.
That East Coast webcast time for Dick's, it's deceiving. You think that it's going to be easier than webcasting a West Coast show, which it is, but it's still really hard. I don't feel like the show starts until like 9 or 10 o'clock anyway.
Right. It's marginal. I actually grabbed a power nap before the show last night. So
That's
totally unintentional. And it made me worried I wouldn't make it through the whole thing. But I did, and it was worth it.
I have memories of the Dick's run in 2015. I webcasted it all from Maryland, and I made it through night 1, night 2, totally fine. Night 3, I loved this for the first set. Second set was great. The disease was amazing. And then I fell asleep, and I wake up, and Trey's singing Harpoo, and I'm like, what is going on? I look at the time, and I'm like, starting to scroll through Twitter, and everyone is freaking out, and rightly so. And so I had to go back and listen to that show, but that was the famous thank you encore that I somehow woke up in, and it was bizarre.
Well, that's a risk we take, and it is. Yeah, it's just late night. Gorge almost killed me, so I did not step for Shoreline, and I missed some stuff. But what are you gonna do? I got up, listened to them all first thing in the morning, and and here we are. We've made it through the tour.
Somehow Fish made it. I think that we should, before we jump into like the larger content, hat tip to Fish. What a incredibly unprecedented tour that they were able to successfully navigate. Massive pandemic where cases are rising around the country. Fish seem to be able to keep things incredibly safe in their behalf, and able to keep the tour moving along. And then wildfires divert one show to another venue. They make as many glasses of lemonade as you could ever want out of those lemons. And here they get to look back and take a break for about 7 weeks. It's amazing.
Yeah, I feel like they could have kept going. I feel like they were ready. I personally could use a few solid nights sleep, but they're they're really on it. Yeah, just really amazing tour, particularly coming off of such a long break. I know we talked about it at the beginning, but looking back over the whole thing, it's just been really stunning.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a really stunning like the rise. I feel like happened really quickly. Like very quickly, we went from the start of tour to like mid tour. It took like 3 shows. Sometimes it takes about a week for them to get settled. And I think we'll talk about this in our next episode, where we take like a 10,000-foot view back on what the tour was in full. But I think from where we're standing right now, I completely agree with you. They've sounded really strong. And I don't want to get too much ahead of myself, but I was thinking last night, as they're closing the tour and as they have a fall tour looming, this may be the strongest Fish that we've heard that has a fall tour since 1998.
That's a bold move there, Cotton. I'm gonna wait and see how that plays out.
I appreciate you waiting and seeing. I am making the bold move.
No, no, I think you're onto something. We've had a few summer tours in recent years where we're like, oh God, why aren't they playing fall now?
Right.
And so yeah, here it comes. Buckle up.
Yeah, it kind of gives you like the mindset of, what does Fish 2015 or Fish coming off of the Baker's Dozen sound with a fall tour, where they're playing at such a high peak, and then you have this break until New Year's. And that break, sometimes it's a good thing, because it just allows you to really appreciate that summer tour as like this strong segment, or strong, statement from the band. But other times, like this tour, I think it's just going to be really cool to see how they take these sounds that they've been playing with and add it into the fall, which tends to create a bit darker jams, tends to create set lists that, are dreams on paper, and then leads up to this Halloween that will usually have a massive impact on the band's performance overall.
There's no question that back in the 90s, when they were playing exhaustive schedules and long summer tours and then coming back out and doing a fall tour, those are some of the best tours. So now they're doing it a little less exhaustively, but hopefully they're enjoying it as much. I know we are.
I am, very much. And speaking of fall tour, and speaking of Halloween and all these things, we do need to announce, I said this at the top, we do need to announce the winner of the Shift Genuine Cannabis contest to send a fan and a friend to Las Vegas on October 30th and 31st. John, do you want to reveal the winner, or do you want me to? How do you want to do
Well,
this?
it's a little awkward because the winner is, let me look it up here. His name is Jonathan Hart. No, obviously it's not me. I didn't enter. That would have been weird. But yeah, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to announce the winner. The winner is
Yes.
Charles Weaver. And Charles, I hope we can say hi in Vegas, because I'll be there, and looks like you will too. So thank you to Shift Genuine Cannabis for this great prize and helping make this podcast happen. And congratulations to Charles.
Absolutely. Yeah, Charles, we will be in touch with you. I'm sure that you've been alerted at this point over the socials, but if not, we'll be in touch with you here in the next couple of days to get everything set up for you. Really, really amazing. The idea of winning tickets to a Fish show, and then on top of that, winning like the lodging and the travel to get there, so that you literally just have to show up. That's a dream of mine. So I'm incredibly jealous of Charles, and thank you to everyone out there who entered the contest. Really appreciate all the enthusiasm that we got around this, and just really excited. The work that we've been doing with Shift going forward is going to be awesome.
I look forward to hearing more about that myself.
Absolutely. So let's jump into this. So like I said at the top here, we're going to do a bit of a recap of the last week as we've been doing on the weekly shows. We'll definitely dig into night 3 of Dick's because night 3 of Dick's was a really, really fun, really good show. John, what
Yes.
happened at Shoreline?
Fish came to play. I think they understood the complications and disappointment around moving the shows. They like Shoreline as a venue. Um, the broader Bay Area, it's not really in San Francisco, but it is sort of the shed adjacent there too. And they were already pretty well warmed up after the gorge. So they showed up. They, opened with a little bit of a message with Glide, um, Forbin's good little micro jam and Wolfman's. I mean, just beautiful sets, beautiful playing. Um, Possibly my favorite stash in a long time, and that's saying something considering I think
Yeah.
before that night my favorite stash was earlier in the tour.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, like great first set out of the gate, and wow, you should talk about first set before we get into the second set because I will never looking back once we get there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said. Like, I felt like when they came out and Fishman started doing that, like my heart kind of just like leapt up a little bit, and I felt just like those warm vibes of like Glide is one of those songs that you listen to any, 92, 93, 94 show. It's there. It feels like early 90s Fish in this kind of quirky, slightly emotional, but still kind of like jokey type of manner. And then obviously the Coventry version is so legendary because it was not played well, but it was also a sign of the emotional weight of that show and of that moment. And I've always tried to look at it more in that perspective than just like the train wreck of the performance. And I feel like since then, every time they play it, they seem to play it in a show where they want to say, like, we're really feeling it tonight. And we really feel this connection to you all. We're glad that you're alive. We're glad that you are here with us. And so playing it there, coming off of the post or the cancellation in Tahoe, just felt like a message. Colonel Forbin's famous Mockingbird, obviously that adds to it. I thought I never needed you like this before. I had a really great solo segment to end it, and I really liked the God of Jabu and the Moon Age Daydream to close out the set. I think it just was really well paced, really good song selection, had enough craziness up top, but then throughout, no matter what they played, they just played really really well.
Yeah, yet another just great set, and then Soul Planet. And I think my favorite thing, aside from the music, the performance of this big jam, my favorite part about the Soul Planet is looking at Twitter and people who were like, "Ah, Soul Planet opener," and because it's not a favorite, it's not broadly a favorite song, and those people, man, they had to eat those words,
They did.
and you know it's what you get for making a snap judgment, I guess. Because man, holy crap, this was a monumental performance. I mean, it's what is it, the third longest jam? It's
Their
one of the
longest jam in Fish
longest jams
history.
of all time. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You have the Worcester '97 Runaway Jim 11:29, the Mud Island 20 or Mud Island '95 Tweezer that was 50 minutes. Runaway Jim was 59. This was 47 minutes, and it was like you know with these like long jams, there's certainly like a moment where it sounds like or multiple moments where it sounds like okay, this jam could probably wind down and end here, and then they find another riff and they build off of that. And this definitely had that, but like one thing that really impressed me by it was that it didn't have it didn't feel like they were trying to stack another segment on just to add 3 minutes. It felt like everything flowed really well. And we were talking to Scott Marks yesterday at the live show that we did on the lot, and he mentioned how Fishman just takes over after 30 minutes. And like, how cool is it that you go 30 minutes into a jam and then Fishman takes over and suddenly the jam builds for another 17 minutes? I mean, it's just incredible. I've listened to it multiple times since. It flows really well. It's up there with some of the best jams that they've ever played, I felt like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a question that the fish answers very well, but you kind of have to ask when you go into something like this. This is a 47-minute song. Leave aside which song it is, right? Because it's obviously like 4 minutes of Soul Planet, and then it, is it worth it? Yes, the answer is yes. They make every bit of it count,
Yeah.
and then a beautiful transition into the final hurrah, which is a great song, and just coming out of all of that as it's just a perfect landing.
Yeah, it's one of those. I love a surprise segue out of a really long jam, no matter how long the jam is. Having the ability to end up in a song that nobody anticipated ending up in is just like such a surprise, fun moment. And the final hurrah just proved to be they were in that groove. They go into the song, and then they kind of added an extended jam onto that because why not? They're feeling it at that point in time. And I'm a huge proponent of them continuing to develop these casual rock songs. I really enjoy them. I enjoy where they've taken these songs over the last couple of years, and seeing them in those slots rather than just standalone in the first set is really cool.
Yeah, they've begun to find new homes throughout the show, and
Yeah.
and I dig them. Theme. We have to mention the Axilla Part 2 bust out. I mean, that's got to be one of the bigger bust outs in a long time. 855 shows.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like,
What?
if at this point in the show you think that they've played just a good show with some bust outs and some fun stuff in the start of the show, massive jam in set two, playing Axilla Part 2, which is a song I think you have been wanting for a while. I have been wanting for a while. I figured you already know the music. Why not just throw the lyrics on? You will blow your entire fan base's minds if you just like play it randomly. To throw it there at this point in time, follow it with Tila and a fantastic hood, just puts a stamp on the entire show.
Absolutely incredible. I will say, I watching the Soul Planet video, because of course it was a set two opener, so the YouTube video of the opener was still online the next morning, and they you could see in the moments before the set started, Rhodey came out and put a sheet up against one of the monitors in front of Trey, and if I had been watching the show live, I would have puzzled and gone, I've seen them put lyric sheets out before and they
Right.
don't bust anything out. But knowing what had happened, I have to assume that they put the Axilla lyrics out there in front of him so he had some intent. Like, I think we'll probably go there. And
Yeah, you could see Trey looking down during the video, and he stumbled a couple of times on the lyrics because I think, the way that those lyrics are matched up to the music, it flows a little bit differently than Axilla One. But I think overall, they even added sometimes they'll bust out a song and like, they'll give you 95% of the song, but not like these little gems that make it count and make it really
right.
special. And they gave us like don't shine that thing in my face, man, like in the outro. And it that song sounds like 94, 95 Fish to me. And I love hearing it, thrown into a set that already is legendary at that point in time.
And you mentioned 94, 95 Fish. Let's think about this. So we have the Axilla 2, Tila into Harry Hood, and the encore is Fee and Wilson. Like, that is classic 90s, 94.
That's
That
a
is
really
the
good
kind of
point.
Fish I used to see when I started seeing Fish. So yeah, it's
Yeah, I
kind of a
definitely
great little run.
I didn't connect that, but then you add on like on a nearly 50-minute jam, and it feels like them tapping back into this mid '90s glory period for like just an evening. But like I'll take it just once every couple of years type of thing if we're lucky.
Yeah, you will. You'll take it. You'll like it. You'll make a podcast about it.
We'll just keep talking about it. And we could spend really the rest of the time here talking about this, but we should move on to
We got
night
more.
two. We got more. We got a lot more, which a night after a show like that is almost like a dreaded endeavor because how do you match a show like that? And it kind of, it resets your expectations of, okay, just a Fish show is a really good thing, but what did they do last night? and I feel like we really got the solidification of how strong the Shoreline run was almost from note one here
Right.
with a Mike song opener.
Like I mean, they could have played "I Am Hydrogen." I want to put that out there, but
You're always for it.
well, I'm always for it. But they
Always.
didn't, and I think they did just a fine job in spite of that misstep. It's not a misstep. I'm just kidding. It's a great Mike's groove. Mike's song is really fun and gets heavy. Doesn't draw out maybe the way we all dream, but slides maybe drops is probably the correct term into the Man Who Stepped Into Yesterday, Alvenu. They don't reprise the Man Who Steps Into Yesterday though, which is uncommon. And a great groove, Mike's groove, Weekapaw groove, excuse me, to cap it. Just a lot of fun, really just powerhouse opener, and also again very early mid 90s in the track listing there.
Yeah. I mean, it almost feels like Man Who Stepped In Yesterday could be an alternative slot in there for Hydrogen. I'm kind of surprised they didn't do that more often in the 90s. But I really enjoyed it. It kept like the game hingy vibe of whatever they were doing at Shoreline, where you had Tila, you had Forbins, now you've got the Man Who Stepped Into Yesterday. It had this very old school feel from the very start of the show, and just knowing a few people who were there, everyone who I knew was at who was at Shoreline are in the 100 to 200 show range, where they've seen so many shows and have seen so many historic shows that it kind of felt in a lot of cases like Fish was playing to an old school audience in a lot of ways. I mean, we're really treating them to, hey, you all have been inconvenienced by this, but also this fan base here in San Francisco and people who travel to San Francisco are a very specific crowd, and we want to reward you in a lot of ways. The set then continued, and just looking at it on paper, I'm remembering how much I enjoyed this during the webcast. Brian and Robert is one of my favorite songs. I absolutely love that. It was the first Fish song I heard. Thread, I'm just thrilled to continue to see that be developed. The Wedge is a really solid slot right there. But then we get the first Cities of 4.0 that turns into an incredible jam that, as I'm sitting here on Monday, I have not listened back to the Cities, and I'm now realizing how much music I need to listen back to over the last 5 days, because it's just been incredible.
There's been so much. I want to quickly say I really enjoy the Thread. That song is cool. This version is cool, and keep playing it. And really, I'm waiting for the kind of like we've said with 20 Years Later, which comes up again later this show. I want the back end of that song to just go, go out. But instead, the Cities goes, and it's it's not super long, but it's just great. I tweeted a lot about the Cities the next day. It really made my day. It's a outstanding jam, and this is what we listen to Fish for, because it's also not quite like the other jams.
Right.
Which is, I mean, how is it that this band is kicking down 15 to 50-minute jams, night after night after night, and they're not all repetitive. They're not all samey. They're finding new pockets to live in. How is that possible?
So it's an incredibly good point. I will answer your question by saying I don't know. It blows my mind.
Brian?
But it blows my mind. And it brings up like my theory is essentially these guys have been playing consistently together for now almost 15 years again. They have got a system down where they play just enough shows. They, I think, have reached the point. When they came back in 2009. There was this sense of, we want Fish to be a part of our lives, not to be the dominant creative output in our lives. I almost feel like they're at a point now where Fish is once again the dominant creative output in their lives and the outlet in their lives. I don't know if those guys are feeling the same way on stage that we're feeling listening to these jams. they have to be thinking to themselves, like, this is some of the best that we've ever played together as a quartet. But
Yeah.
I agree with you fully. I was thinking about that, and we'll get into it here as we talk about the Dick shows. Every single jam, from the moment that they left whatever song they were playing to the moment that they were in free form improvisation, they were in a completely different musical space than they had been in the song before that they did that. And that's a really rare thing. Even if you go back to the 90s or to 2.0, there's like a thematic thread from a song to the jam that they kind of then had to break out of. And now they're in open improvisation within, the first measure of whatever they're trying to do.
Yeah, they can just step right across that threshold
Yeah.
and at will. And some people have in recent years bemoaned the fact that, well, it seems like they could just do it at any time. Why don't they? Well, I think they're really giving us the balance now. They're like, we've got all these great songs. We're going to play them. Any one of them might have a jam. The ones you expect to have a jam really might have a jam, but maybe not. Maybe not. Nice landing out of that cities into passing through.
Yeah.
Fluffhead to wrap a set. Oh, great closer. And then Lizards open set 2. How great is that? That's
First ever Lizard set 2 opener. Incredible.
There you go. Just goddamn glorious, this band sometimes. Tweezer. So they start playing Tweezer. What are your thoughts? You're thinking, okay, we'll get a 16-minute Tweezer. There's no way they're going for it like they did last night.
It kind of goes back to like what you were saying of like, how is it possible that this band is playing this much improvisation and being creative? I kind of figured you play a 50-minute jam, you're kind of out of some ideas. And I think to Fish's testament, they seem to know when to cut a jam off. That like either we're in a space that's not challenging us, or we're in like an area that's like repetitive of something else that we did, and they just want to get out of that as quickly as possible. And you would assume that Tweezer, for as many great jams as come out of Tweezer throughout the years, that there are those like 12 to 16-minute Tweezers where it's good but it's not great. And this one was great all the way through. This one featured Trey on lead in a really defined way, and then moved into a bizarre Deer Creek Simples type of segment, and then went back to Bliss. It was wild to listen to
it. And then they land in Miss You. I think a nice transition into a really strong version of this beautiful song. I know you've talked a lot through this tour about the ballads, and I got your back on that, man. It's this one in particular is such a great song that has at times not quite come off over the years. I feel like the pacing of this song it's very precarious. I feel like this one was done well. Trey's solo, he has a short solo in the middle of it there. It's just really just gets right to it. It's a short one, but it's beautiful and good version. And then
I think,
and then
just to jump off that really quickly, I think there's something to be said about the way that they played the ballads this summer. Is they're playing with their playing is very delicate right now, and it's very nimble, and I think it caters to these ballads that are slower but have this groove that needs to be maintained. And like Miss You has that kind of like plodding groove throughout the song that if they're not synced up, it sounds kind of all over the place. And I think the way that they're playing right now just caters to a song like that, where they can leave space in between the notes, but when Trey hits those chords and the slide up, it works perfectly.
Really does. And they maintain that kind of the quiet end of the dynamics, and I think that is the thing we need to come back to maybe when we recap the entire tour next week or something, is talk about dynamics, because they've got the kind of control over that well, I mean, they've always been pretty good at it, but they're demonstrating mastery level, and you hear it with Piper. It I don't know. Does this count as a slow build? It's slower than some, slower than anything they did last year or year 2019 or the year before or what have you. Um, it's a nice little Piper, and I got to listen to it
I
for the
wonder if
first
it's one of
time
those
with
things
my
that's like,
daughter Piper.
oh man, I love that. I
Yeah,
wonder if it's one of those moments that word has gotten to Trey that, hey, you used to take 2 minutes to get into this song, and now you just go right for the chords. And I wonder if it's one of those things where he listened back and said, oh yeah, we used to do that. Let's bring that back. And it's definitely not like a 1998 level slow build where it takes an extended period of time and like it's such a payoff. But they're getting there. They're embracing how well they play quietly right now, and that's helping
yeah,
them immensely.
yeah, I think so. And then we get 20 years later, which is, I love that song. So very cool.
Same.
Um, and I feel like the twist is, I don't want to say throwaway, but the twist kind of doesn't really go. But I'm okay with it. They seem okay with it, and a big number line to close out the set. Um, congratulations, you all got number lined, and it's a great song, and I hope you loved it.
Likewise, yeah. No, it's fun.
Yeah,
It's a good closing to the set that kind of serves a purpose more than like I don't really know what else they needed to do at that point. Was the feeling I had.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. The set delivered, and they closed it. Life beyond the dream. I think that's a pretty clear message there, and Tweezer reprise to send everybody trucking to Colorado.
And so we arrived in Colorado for Friday night show, September 3rd, 2021. Interesting first night. Tell me from the couch, how did this sound for you? And we can kind of go back and forth of from the couch versus in the venue.
Yeah, I think there'll be some potential for interesting contrasts. I first of all, overall, like the show. So, I don't know what kind of controversy you're hoping to raise here, but I was kind of incautiously anticipating them to come roaring out of the gates, which, as I've always said, that's, unwise. You don't want to have expectations, and you will, because they'll get you. Um, so for a moment, I was like, okay, standard 46 days. Okay, party time. They're here to throw down. They're going to have a good time. We're going to get some songs. It's going to be a very first set, maybe. But then they played Timber, and you could hear they were like riding the line.
Totally.
Like that Timber was like this close to just I forget that I'm on video. I can actually do something like this. This never comes off on the audio podcast. Hold my fingers so close together, this close to busting into something. But they don't, and they get a little bit of expansive without busting out, and the genie's there in the bottle. The cork is just ready to blow. A solid foam. Let me just say, it was the second one of tour, is like outstanding. We're talking like a song that Trey has struggled with.
Yes.
This is an objective position of accurate performance, and Trey
Totally.
really got there on this one, and I was astounded. I was like, wow, yes. And then Vultures, cool. Pebbles, real cool. Carini, holy cow, here we go. Now it's on.
Yeah.
So, Brian, you were there. You had the exact same experience, right?
I had actually a very similar experience. I felt like I agree with a lot of what you're saying. So this is my fifth Dick's run, and in years past, I saw 2012, and then I've seen everything since 2017. And the Friday night of 2012, 17, and 18, I left all three of those shows, and especially the first sets, just completely exhausted. It was as if they stepped on that stage and the vibe and the energy just overtook them, and they played just such a monumentally brilliant show that they almost couldn't make up for it for the remainder of the weekend. There was no way to reach that level again. And I went in assuming, not expecting, but assuming that based on how they were playing, that that was what the first set was going to be like, and it wasn't to a certain degree. Um, for me, I loved the timber. The set really started for me at Foam. I saw three songs in a row: Foam, Vultures, and Pebbles and Marbles. These were my third performance for all three songs. So very rare songs for me to see. Um, Foam, I absolutely have, like, I fell in love with that song all over again during season one of Undermine. I did a really great interview with Drew Hitz that went into episode 4 where he broke down Foam, and I just found myself through the spring just listening to like every version of Foam that I could find, just like one after another. I was just blown away by the song. Pebbles and Marbles, Round Room is my favorite Fish album. That was my first Pebbles and Marbles since 2.0. Just a beautiful song. The lyrics, Tom wrote that about his daughter. I had a daughter earlier this year, so like thinking about her during that song just added a different element to like the lyrics and like the enjoyment of it. Um, but then once they fade out of that, there's like a moment of silence, and then Trey just rips into Karini. And it felt right there like he kick-started the weekend in a lot of ways. Like they were settled in, they'd played some rarities, they'd nailed Foam, and now you get Karini. Expected it to end the set, figured, cool, we're in for like a 14-15 minute version that will have a really good peak, and then it will end. And instead, Fish decided, actually, we're going to start set too early. We're just going to go into a wild, mind bending jam. We're going to throw everybody off their axis, and then we're going to peak it. And suddenly, welcome to Dix. This is the end of set one.
Right. I think you use the word peak, in a tour full of like amazing extended jams. This one goes right there on the pile. We'll have to sort them out in the coming weeks, years. I don't know. But this is a lovely, like, sectional jam, multiple modulations, and just a outstanding melodic peak. And a walk off, like a set closing Karini.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I mean, set openers have happened a lot, and everybody just knows, Trey hits those chords. I'm like, yeah, and we throw down. To do it at the end of set one, in the, I'm old, so I think of it as like the antelope slot, and
Yeah.
like, wow, it was great. I loved it. So let's talk about night 2, or is it too soon? Or not? Set 2, excuse me. Let's talk about set 2. I'm jumping way ahead. Brian, tell me your thoughts here. Where were you? Tell me about the Dicks. Like, are you a stands guy? Are you a field guy? Or what
I'm a stands
do?
guy. My first year at Dick's was 2012, and we got stands tickets about 2 weeks before the show. My wife and I got married on August 25th, 2012. Did a road trip through Wyoming and ended up at Dick's, and we've always joked that that was our honeymoon. It kind of was. We were on the road during that period in time, planning to go back overseas, and we just happened to be at Dick's that year. Got stands. We're always page side, so we went in. We found these seats in section 129. Met really good people, had really great sight lines, really enjoyed the sound there. And outside of 2017, where I sat towards the back of the venue, every other run that I've been at Dick's, I've sat in the exact same section, section 129, right looking on. Always have great sight, great sound. It's my favorite place in the entire venue, and it's my favorite venue to see Fish. So it's right there with me with I believe it's section 115 in MSG. That's like right next to the stage, just like slightly behind where you can like see the lights go out on the. It's just one of those places where like I just happen to get really good Fish shows. So that's where we were posted up.
Nice.
I felt like this second set was kind of like the first set in the sense that like it took them a bit of time to get into it. It felt slightly unhinged and disjointed. That said, it sounded like there could have been some really cool moments in a song I heard the ocean sing, but Trey seemed to want to move out of that fairly rapidly. Once he got into Chalk Dust Torture, it was this moment of like, we're at Dick's, we're playing one of those songs that when we play at Dick's, it just seems to connect. And he just seemed like a total rock star kicking off Chalk Dust Torture, knowing, it was almost like he could tell we're going to take this into a really cool territory, and it ended up in a fantastic 20-minute jam.
Yeah, I, I have a hard time separating that chalk dust from what came after. So, but that is really where the set starts, isn't it? I mean, the first two songs are great, fine, and I love a song I heard the ocean sing. I've only even seen it once somehow. I keep missing it. And yeah, you want it to go big. You think it could, but okay, not tonight. Then chalk dust, and that is another 20-minute, almost exactly 20-minute version here.
Yeah.
And then into Beneath Sea of Stars Part 1, which I think is finally gaining kind of the broad respect of the fan base that it deserves. This one and the Gorge version, I think, probably are why. Um, Not that AC is a slouch, but the improvisation inside that framework of that song is just, it's kind of dazzling. It's kind of just, it's not like anything else that Fish is really doing in a song.
Right. And I feel like that song has like, when I talk about like why I love how the ballads are played, I feel like Beneath the Sea of Stars is one of those songs that like they're playing it so often and so well right now that it caters to, it like spills over into other performances, where if they can play something that delicate and that weightless that well, it spills over into like kind of softer, slower songs. I really don't want to be blasphemous here because I know I'm talking to the host of the Broke Down podcast, but the initial appeal of Beneath the Sea of Stars for me was that it sounds like Trey is channeling early 70s Jerry Garcia. It's got that like those licks that just kind of like roll off the stars and like land, it's like dust that he's playing in a sense. And it's beautiful, and the band behind him is almost playing nothing, and it ends up then in these very abstract kind of wall of sound type of jams that sound unlike anything else. It's almost unprecedented in what Fish plays in their current in the current structure of the band. But I just love it. I love how the song has evolved. There was a great Mohegan Sun version. I really wanted it at Dick's 2019. I was so pleased to get it midway through the set, coming off of a phenomenal chalk dust. Like, it couldn't have been placed better for my taste of that song.
Yeah, they find a little landing pad in this song, which has an actual song bit at first, not a lot of lyrics, but and then there's this framework that they work in, building their phrases and communicating and bouncing off one another in just a fairly different way than
Yeah.
what they were doing 5 minutes earlier in that big chalk dust jam. Yeah, it creates a delightful space, and
Yeah.
I don't know how to compare it to Grateful Dead. I won't. So you go ahead and try. So on fish.net, I'm skipping ahead a little. They go into light and they plasma. On fish.net, they say they go back into chalk dust. Live fish doesn't count it that way. Where do you fall? Does it matter?
Personally, I think I would have it closer to where Live Fish has it. It felt like there were elements of like when they have it noted as they say here on fish.net, plasma contained party time quotes and 46 days teases. The second chalk dust torture included plasma and a song I heard the ocean sing quotes. Personally, I would have plasma containing all of that, because it felt like that was all hyper connected to plasma rather than moving into chalk dust torture. I know that he did play the riff and they went into more of like the song structure of chalk dust torture than they did any of the other songs, but it felt like this kind of like evolving blob of plasma kind of held all of that within its song structure.
I like the notion of plasma as an evolving blob. It seems to fit, doesn't it?
I thought that this was the moment where, like, they'd played these two really great jams in Carini and Chalk Dust, and this was the moment where Fish kind of stopped searching during this show and just had fun. And Light has kind of taken a step down from being a significant jam vehicle this tour. There was a really great version earlier in the summer at Nashville, a really strong version. But outside of that, it really kind of seems to serve a purpose right now to be a stepping stone for segues and having it move into Plasma, which then references all these earlier songs, and then you get a Jim and a Slave to close out the set. It kind of felt like the moment where Fish just was able to kind of step back and just like smile and enjoy the fact, that they're at Dick's for the first time in 2 years, and they've played, a relatively high quality show here on a very strong tour.
Yeah, and Jim, Slave to close the set, 3-song encore. What's not to like, right? They're ready.
Yeah,
I think that's the message, isn't it?
they're ready. They're ready, and they were ready when we moved on to Saturday here. Is it going to be a Saturday night special, or are they going to go deep? It's always the eternal question, and I think we got right out the gates, Alumni Blues, Jimmy Page, Alumni Blues. I mean, it's on par with like a glide opener, although this is on the opposite spectrum of like the humorous side of Fish, but an old school, very very rare song to kick off a show. There wasn't a single person when I looked around as they were opening up with Alumni who wasn't like either high fiving or hugging or like jumping up and down. Like it was just one of those moments where the opener just connects immediately with the audience, and everybody is already mid show vibes at that point.
Yeah, it's it's a great one out of the gates. I really like this whole first set.
Me too.
It's just like one cool song after another.
Yeah.
Great jamming in Blaze On, of course, Ghost, and I'm skipping some stuff, but I want to get ahead to that David Bowie because they played it was a well played Type 1 David Bowie, and it's been a while since I felt like I could just say that confidently in front of an audience and not have too many people blast me for being overly optimistic or whatever. I thought they really did it. They really, I mean, no big jam, I'm afraid, but they really, I feel like, landed an excellent David Bowie for the first time in a while.
Yeah, I was thinking about you during it because we've been as we've both been freaking out over the quality of stashes this tour. I think that we're both on the same page. I know that you are a big Summer '95 proponent, as am I, and the idea of a David Bowie getting the stash treatment in this day and age is just something that kind of gets like, if that happens, it would be for me on par with the Mike Second Jam from Nashville 2015, where I feel like it would break Fish Twitter in some cases. I thought when they started it, you're coming off of an incredibly strong set thus far. Blazon went into a very, very cool space. I feel like that is going to be one of those gems that in 6 weeks, someone, who I follow on Twitter is going to be like, oh my God, has anyone talked about the Dick's Blazon? What a great underrated version. It's just like stuck there in set one. Ghost, Tube, similar in that sense. But they added just some extra patience to the intro of David Bowie, which just had me so intrigued. And it felt like the first time I thought it, and I'd have to run back and do the numbers, but to me, it was the most interesting intro to David Bowie since 12/28/2003 in Miami, where they really took their time opening up the run with that.
Right. I don't have any dates in my back pocket on that, but it was throwing me back. And I
Yeah,
tweeted something about it at the time that, there's promise here that they're
yeah,
going to do this in the intro of Bowie. I mean, look, my third show was Providence 94. So and in the shows that I saw subsequently in the next year, I saw several other David Bowies and they were all good. And so I'm spoiled. It's a fact. I'm straight up spoiled. So when I hear an intro like this, I'm thinking, holy cow, they're going for it. They're going for something. And what they went for is an outstanding Type 1 David Bowie. I felt like Trey was confident and strong through the composed song. The the jam in the middle of it was nice. It was what it should be, at minimum. And
yeah.
and then the outro, they came right back to it and landed strong. I thought it in the moment, went back and listened, still held up, and it gives me hope that Vegas is going to get the biggest Bowie in 18 years.
Well, I was going to say, as you're mentioning that, like, it's something we should be tracking over the next couple of weeks, and should kind of, could be a cool little, like, it'd be a fun thing to observe as they move into fall tour. Is you see this happen every so often, where a song is going to return to being a jam vehicle. Is the band testing out certain segments of it? It kind of happened with Stash in early 3.0, where you would hear the band kind of test out, okay, can we take this for a few measures in this way and still get back to Stash? And you're hearing that slightly happen. There was a really great David Bowie to close out the first set of the final show in Mexico 2020, which is, as I know, doesn't count, based on your rubric. But it was a great version, and we've heard good placement for Bowie throughout the summer tour, and then we hear this version at Dick's that kind of slowly moves its way into the song before then playing a really great Type 1 version. Who knows what's going to happen, but it could be interesting to track to see if, like, the band is starting to kind of kick around in there and see if there is something that can happen.
I think one of the differences,
go ahead.
I'm going to jump in here. One of the differences between, like, the Mexico, which had a jam, is that the framework for the song was not there. And
True, that's a good point.
People who I've talked with about this over the past couple of years, I think they'll agree with me that they got it this time. So yes, no big jam, but the framework is there. And I feel like, if you look at night one, where they played Foam, a really good Foam, for the first time in a while, to be honest, that gives them the comfort, that gives them the confidence, the positive self-feeling, whatever it takes, to feel like, well, all right, now let's rip the doors off, and so you get that Carini. I feel like nailing David Bowie, even though it's a set closer, that kind of sets us up.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. And it sets us up for potentially a future great David Bowie, but also, as we moved into set two, this is the thing that happens in Phish, throughout Phish history. In 94 and 95, it was whenever you heard the hi-hat intro to David Bowie, you knew that something big was coming. Now you hear that kind of beta band type of groove that kicks off Everything's Right. And you just know, okay, this is a song that the band is just fully confident jumping off into a jam vehicle for. And for me, we'll get into this when we talk about night three, but for me, the Everything's Right, this was my favorite jam of the entire weekend. This got into a jamming space that I just seek out. It was hypnotic. It was groove based. It didn't really need a peak nor flirt with one in a lot of ways. It seemed to just completely captivate the entire audience. And there was a moment where, that lighting rig just descended and it was like hovering over the band, and they were locked into such a groove. You could kind of feel it just like pulsating through you, and you could feel like waves of it through the crowd. And it was one of those moments where this roar just like erupted from the back of the venue and just took over. And it was, one of those kind of like hat tip moments to Phish of like, whatever you're doing right now, don't stop. And they just kept the groove kind of extending for another 30 seconds as a result of it, which I will be listening to that jam extensively in the coming weeks, months, years. It's one of those that will be an all-timer in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great one. I mean, they really, when they cross the 20-minute mark, it's arguably just you realize that you're experiencing something grand. And I'm not speaking about specifically the music and at that moment. I'm just saying that you listen to it and suddenly you're like, wow, this is really gone. It's Everything's Right, but it's really 4 or 5 outstanding instrumental songs built into one long extended song, and they're just masterful. I don't know. We could keep sitting. Because we're talking about all these different jams, and it's like they have the vocabulary to play 6 20-minute jams that all sound different, but I'm not sure I have the vocabulary to talk about them all in different ways on this in the same one sitting,
Right,
which is
right.
which is something.
Yeah.
They move into Fuego. I think the Fuego intro was not right.
Quite botched.
At the moment, I was like, oh, okay, but it's really cool how they got there,
Yeah.
and Trey figured it out. And then Farmhouse, lovely Farmhouse, good break.
Quite lovely
Uh,
farmhouse.
Mercury. I really like this Mercury. I messaged you to confirm that it wasn't crazy, but around the 10-minute mark, you can definitely hear Trey and Paige messing with two versions of me. So cool. It's just really cool. But I thought they were going to go there, and they didn't. Trey was like, "Oh no, 7 Below. Listen, here,
Right.
it's right here."
Yeah, it reminded me of the Magnum Ball 46 Days, which also has a really distinct two versions of me jam that it's a really beautiful just melody for them to get into. And I was just thinking about it, we talked about it beforehand, but like you get this two versions of me jam and then you find 7 Below. You get it's a very 2.0 feel midway through the Mercury jam where they're moving to the kind of grooves 20 years ago. Um, I love 7 Below. I feel very fortunate whenever I see 7 Below. It's one of my favorite songs from that era. I went a very long time without seeing 7 Below, so I'm always thankful for it. If I could be critical for a second, I thought that the Mercury had a really, really great groove going. We could have potentially used a tease of 7 Below and then moved back into the jam. It felt slightly forced, and at that moment, the set kind of felt like it kind of came off the rails a little bit. This second set was not my favorite set from the overall weekend. I think I would have it a little like lower in kind of my overall kind of ranking of where the sets went over the weekend. I liked the little jam that came out of it, but I don't know if it necessarily like the Mercury was just great. And that's it.
Trey had to. I mean, some transitions just happened, right? Trey
Mm-hmm,
had to
mm-hmm,
turn
mm-hmm.
around and look at Fish as he's
Yes.
playing the 7 Below riff, and Fish was like, "Okay, 7 Below," and he starts playing
Okay.
7 Below.
Now I play this.
Yeah. Um, big. I'm going to say standard big. You Enjoy Myself to close the set. I love Bold as Love as an encore.
Yeah.
Just takes me right back to my
Right
childhood.
there with you. Yes.
A really good one. Let's
Yeah.
get into night 3, Brian.
Cool. Night 3 was a big
Right.
one. Night 3 was a big one. Going into the show, wondering, are we going to like what's happening here with this run? We've had some really high highs. We've had some inconsistency here and there in terms of song selection, flow, pace. Felt like at that point, like we'd had one really, really good set on Saturday night one, and you're wondering, like, do they really have it in them for the tour closer? Like, what are we getting here? Before we jump into it, I will just say out the gates, this is one of my favorite Fish shows I've ever seen. I had a very incredible crew that I was with. I was with some of our Osiris brethren for the majority of this show, which was really fantastic to take in with them. Some of my absolute best friends who I've been seeing shows with for the last 20 years. And even in the one moment where I said, why are we playing this right now? I was proven wrong by the band. Every other moment in the show, every song that was played, I felt like, yep, perfect song right now. Oh my God, amazing version. Perfect song right now. Oh my God, amazing version. And that just kept building throughout the entire show to the end when they were playing Santos and like the refrain of you will always remember where you were just felt so fitting for that show, just being blasted out from the crowd back at Fish.
Okay, so you're going to have to tell us what that one moment was, but don't jump ahead unless
I
it's
won't.
the opener.
No.
Which, when they opened with MoMA Dance and it was cool, and then McGrupp, and I was like, uh-oh, they've already done the M show before. They're not going to do that to us. But again, kind of like Foam, I want to shout out a really well played McGrupp.
Very well played.
Yeah. Sand had a good, micro jam into Sigma Oasis, which they stretched out a bit there. It's kind of nice to hear.
Midway through Sigma Oasis, I felt like we were in a second set type jam, and it got dark. It got really thematic. There was like a throbbing nature to what we're playing, and I love that jam. That's going to forever be one of my favorite jams of the whole weekend and the whole run.
Yeah, well, it's a good one. I'll tell you. I don't think I get to. I said something to my wife. She was like, "Hey, you're gonna help me with the trash because it's Sunday night. Stuff's got to get done, right?" I'm like, "I don't know. They're playing Sand. I'm not getting up during Sand to go deal with the trash. It's like they're bound to play something I can I can comfortably walk away from eventually." And they go into Sigma Oasis. Sigma Oasis jam is out there, and she's like, "Well, what about now?" It's like, "Please, no way." And then and so I had to get up for all of these dreams. Not that I don't like all of these dreams, but I had to get up. And little did I know there was an opportunity ahead where I could have waited for. But how did you feel about that drop into all of these dreams? Are you good with that? You enjoy it?
I
Or
loved
is
it.
that your moment? Okay.
No, I loved it. It combined two things I absolutely love, which are the ballads this tour and also Round Room. And I haven't gone back and run the numbers, but I feel like we got like 6 different songs from Round Room throughout this overall Dix run, and I was really really pleased by that. I'd been hoping for one of my songs I'm chasing is Thunderhead. They haven't played it at all since 2003, I believe. I think December 1st, 2003. I would absolutely kill for them to bring it back. So like, I don't even want to pick because I thought all of these dreams are so beautiful, but like that was the under my or the Round Room ballad that I was chasing.
So then they played Reba, and I thought it was a pretty good Reba. The stream died at the Reba peak, and it was if they just
I
threw the
saw that.
toaster into the tub because it was just like I
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
thought I died too. And then it happened. It turned out it happened to everybody. And so,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, Reba just kind of ended abruptly, and then the set was over. Right? That's how it happened for you guys, right?
Reba, they've been doing. I feel like there's a lot of confidence in Trey in the Reba solo, and he's not looking back at Fishman to say, "Okay, play the drum riff to end the song." And Fishman's just letting him kind of build and build, and it's this like very hosey feel to it. I loved that Reba. Reba was a song I was hoping to get during the weekend. That's one of those songs I can hear at every single Fish show. Um, and then Bathtub Gin to follow it up, a huge classic right there, back on the heels of Reba. Bathtub Gin didn't necessarily go to the kind of crazy dark sonic spaces that it went to in Deer Creek or Nashville or Atlantic City, but it found this. I don't know what key it was in, but it was in a slightly different key from the standard Bathtub Gin peak that peaked itself and just added another element to the overall show before they moved back into the Bathtub Gin closing proper, and thus closed one of the 3 strongest first sets I've ever seen. I was absolutely blown away at the end of this.
Well, I was gutted when the stream stopped. I was
Yeah,
angry as
yeah.
as a consumer, uh, and then I saw, oh great, they're playing Bathtub Gin now. God damn it. Um, I want to take a second. I listened to that Gin this morning though, and it's great. You're
Yeah.
describing it well, and I need to spend more time with it. I'm still a little bitter, obviously. I want to take a second and say that during the set break on Saturday and last night, stream came back in time for this. They ran a not short segment of Trey doing a rig rundown, and he went through every pedal. And as he did it, he built up a loop, and uh, it was very entertaining to watch. Fun. Trey's just enjoying talking about his toys and his gear, and
Yeah.
it's educational. If you've ever wondered where that particular sound Trey is playing is coming from, he tells you it's in there. It's pretty cool, and I really hope everybody has an opportunity to see that. That was from the couch. a real highlight of the whole thing. I mean, the music is astounding and it's been great all weekend, but that was just like outstanding bonus. Um, so we have another set. Do you think you can put words to this other set?
We have another set, and I don't want to say I was necessarily worried, but there was a wonder: do they still have enough in the tank for this final set of the summer? Quick side note: the theory of, can Fish just play a great show at any time, or are they holding back on purpose because they want to play these other songs? It's I think it's something we could talk about, and I think there's like a laughable truth to it, because there's so much that goes into a great show. And as I've heard, and as I can only imagine, if someone gets stuck in traffic, or gets has a bad experience at the hotel or at a restaurant earlier in the day, and they show up for the show, their head's in a different place than it would be on a quote great show, and it may impact the music. There's so much that goes into having a great show. That said, the sound check before the show was a jam, with Trey making up a song that was basically titled "Tonight's going to be the greatest or the best show of the tour. I know this because I can see the future." And he kind of sang that line over a jam. So perhaps he knew what he was getting himself into. I don't know. Maybe, who am I to question Trey Anastasio in this setting? But opening up with "Set Your Soul Free" felt, kind of like the "Everything's Right" the night before, and the fact that this run doesn't have a Mike's, a Tweezer, a Down with Disease. It's the first Dick's run without a Down with Disease in their entire time playing there. The fact that they're just putting these new songs on a pedestal and saying, "Do what you will," in the same way that they did with Tweezer and Bowie in the mid '90s, and with Ghost in 1997, 1998, and with 46 Days and Sense and Subtle Sounds in 2.0, and Light in early 3.0. They're taking these songs that they know can go places and just saying, "You have the preeminent slot of the show. Let's see what happens." And "Set Your Soul Free" turned into a phenomenal jam. I think, you know, I don't want to, nitpick too much. I think I overall enjoyed the "Everything's Right" slightly more. But I think the "Set Your Soul Free" got back to that place that made "Everything's Right" so special.
Yeah, I mean, another big set two opener. I know RJ says he likes the big jam and the number two slot after a ballad or whatever, but RJ's not here, so I
Well,
like
in
the big
sitting
set
with
two
RJ,
opener.
I can tell you that he enjoyed this in this slot.
Oh, you mean he didn't
he,
like say,
he was
they should have played
he was 10 feet above the ground the entire set.
right. Um yeah, I mean they went big. It went big. It went out almost 20 minutes and it slides beautifully into the Lonely Trip. Just
Yeah, man.
wow. That was nice call. Nice call right there. Nice song. Still, melodically similar in my brain to After the Gold Rush,
Oh
but
yeah,
but different, different enough.
yeah, yeah,
I
man.
mean, I
That's a
think
really
it's a
great call.
vibe, similar vibe too. But they then Simple, right? So I thought we were going to get one of those like beautiful anthemic versions of Simple. It was still early enough that it could have gone big and long, and and that would have been amazing. But instead of the like towering guitar licks and beautiful changes of the jam, they went a whole other way with this short, weird jam, and it has this kind of funky white guy groove, and they Trey starts singing Catapult, and Mike jumps right in. To his credit, after the first line, Mike's like, "Okay, we're doing Catapult on this," and what were you thinking during this? I'd really like to know what the band was thinking, but we can't know that. So what were you thinking?
I was feeling a lot. One thing I want to say before I jump into it, um, this was my first completely sober Fish run I've ever done. I quit drinking earlier this year, and um, I've enjoyed. I haven't had like too many challenges with the process, but I also like in the COVID world. I haven't really gone out and been in that position where it's like, hey, this is the time to drink a beer and have a really good time. And so like there was a slight worry on my behalf going into the Dick's run of like, am I going to feel this need to do this? I really want to stick with the route I'm on right now. And I felt totally fine. I felt like I've recently discovered Topo Chico, and it's like the greatest alternative. You have the bottle in your hand; it's got the right amount of fizz. But my point in saying all this is, I sent a message to close buddy Josh Carver at Nola Sox, big friend of the pod, and I said I'm cold sober at this show, and I'm on another planet. And like that experience of just like, and it happened during that simple where I felt like I was lifted off. So I thought as it was happening, this is where Fish Genesis meets Fish Frank Zappa. It's that like 70s prog meets just like absurdist humor. It sounded like they were playing like Kraftwerk. I mean, it was like this like German 70s groove to it that just like someone mentioned it here. I'll shout him out. Aaron Lockwood. Can we ask the $1,000 question? Do you have I'm hooked up to a machine playing on a freaky, funky loop in their brains? The second we got back to my house last night, we played this, and for the last now 12 hours, ever since people started waking up at my house, people just started like looking at each other and going, wah na 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 wah da da da. Like it's in there, it's stuck in my head. The last thing I'll say, I saw Catapult at my second Fish show, 7/18/2003. It came out of this phenomenal Down with Disease and was played over a Psycho Killer melody. I loved it then because one of my early Fish tapes was 7/16/94, the Catapult out of Run Like an Antelope. But I know I didn't fully appreciate getting a Catapult in my second show. I legitimately lost my mind when I heard Trey singing the first line to Catapult because it's a song I've been chasing since then. I've wanted to feel that like weirdness in a venue, and man, I loved it. Whatever I felt about this show, which I will say at the end of our breakdown here, it was completely solidified during this Catapult. I felt lifted up above the ground. What did you feel?
Oh man, I was baffled and thrilled. I will say, I don't want to spoil it, but in the next second segment of the podcast with Ryan, which I actually just had that conversation with him before we did this. He has a very interesting kind of take on what they're playing in the background, and I can hear it. But I wouldn't have jumped there myself. So everybody will have to get the podcast to hear that. But I think it's just great weird music that I want that kind of weird music from Fish. It doesn't always have to sound like this. I just want them to be
Yeah.
experimenting and creating, and I just love Trey's like focused effort to bring new sounds out of his rig, and find inspiration from those new sounds, and you're really hearing it in full flight here. And then they started to play Meat Stick. And I'm going to tell you, I've said this before on the podcast over the years, I don't love Meat Stick. It's not my favorite song. It's not one I hope to see. But they went right for the same flavor of weird that they had been working on prior to Meat Stick. They kind of went back there and, started mashing Meat Stick into it. And that worked for me. I really dug it. And I mean, just this band, so weird, so good.
So we're on the same page with what you said. So this Meat Stick was the one moment in the show where I was like, really? So there was when I first got into Fish, I thought Meat Stick was hilarious. I loved hearing it. It's got this good bubbly groove. It's a huge part of Big Cyrus. And then I started seeing a lot of Fish shows, and it seemed like there was a run from, I believe, 2011 until 2018, where every single multi-show run I saw, 2 nights, 3 nights, 4 nights, whatever, at one venue, I always caught Meat Stick. And it just followed me around, and it became a joke between me and my friends that like we're just waiting on the Meat Stick that's going to come. And so We are beaming mid-second set. Every single one of us is just like hugging, high-fiving. Everyone's, giving superlatives in the set, and then they bring on Meat Stick. And it turned into a pretty funny moment in my section where I had friends ragging on me. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to enjoy it. It's not my favorite song. I don't really find it funny anymore. And then they go into that crazy jam again. And, another thought I had about the jam, this whole segment from Simple to Catapult to Meat Stick, was this is Casvote Voxed. Like, this is Fish covering Casvote Voxed. This is like them playing in the laboratory in Greenland. And I loved it. I love the space that they were in. I love the start-stop aspect of it. It totally worked. And in hindsight, I'm glad they played Meat Stick. And this is the show that will make me love Meat Stick. I think it finally happened.
Well, I can't hate on what they did with it on this one. That's for sure.
Correct.
And then they drop into Ruby Waves, which has been a big number at times. I don't think this one was huge, but it was good and pivotal. And they literally pivoted at the end of this one and got into just a beautiful space that we would call bliss jamming, but in fact, it was actually bliss.
Yeah, the second version ever.
Right. So that takes that song out of my 100% club down to the 50% club. Damn it.
I'm right there with you now.
Yeah, so are a lot of people.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I'm just joking. Obviously, I'm happy everybody got to see it. I'm thrilled they played it into a really nice Billy Breeds. Like a really nice Billy Breeds. Beautiful. The only thing about this Billy Breeds is when it ended, I thought, well, what now?
Right.
We already had. I mean, is it time for Harry Hood?
Right.
No.
It's most events are planned, and to your point about Ruby Waves, like and what I was saying earlier with Everything's Right and Set Your Soul Free, I really love how they're giving these new songs a prominent place, and you got a really cool prominent spot for most events aren't planned. I kind of figured when they started it, okay, looking at the time, this will probably end the set. I think we're probably still a few performances away from most events aren't planned being able to really, end a set in that sort of manner. And I think it was all for the better because the Harry Hood was absolutely stunning. The closing peak was really nailed by Trey. It was one of those moments where it kind of was standing a little bit forward, knees bent, just like strumming as like aggressively as possible at the peak to the crowd. The place was just like giving it back to him. It was, it reminded me of the closing Harry Hood on September 2nd, 2012 at Dick's as well, where placement for Harry Hood after a really solid, really strong run, after an incredible show. What else is there to say thank you to this experience than that moment in Harry Hood?
Yeah, it's a great Harry Hood. But what else is there? Well, there's probably more. Come on, give me some credit.
Come on, we set you up for that one.
Okay, yeah, that was terrible, and I want to apologize to everybody listening who's still managing to hang on here with us.
The beauty of live TV is that we can't edit that.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel sorry for anybody who blew this up onto their TV screen either. More into Santos. Honestly, great closing to the show, to the weekend, the tour. I know people don't love more. Some people don't love more, but I don't share that opinion. I think that it's just a joyous kind of statement to the band, from the band to the audience, to the world.
I used to be one of those people. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I used to really not connect with the song, and I was listening to it only a few weeks back, and the line, I guess it's never really over, even when it's over, just like kind of hit me. When lyrics sometimes will just like hit you like a ton of bricks, and you're like, oh my God, I hear this song in a completely different way now. It reshaped the way that I heard the song, and it made it sound much more personal. It felt initially to me like a grand statement on where we're at in society and in history and whatnot. And I liked it more on a personal level from my own perspective. And so hearing that in that place, because I hadn't seen it live since I really had like a moment of connection with it, it felt like the perfect encore slot. Again, 2 new songs that we've only been listening to for the last 5 years. or so, and Moore and Santos to close out the summer tour. I mean, that's typically your like, Rocky Top to Tweezer reprise segment, or Contact to Tweet. What I mean? Like that's the slot in the show where they say these are two of our older songs that work in an encore. But no, here we're getting two new songs that work really well in this slot, and you'll always remember where you were. What a way to end the overall tour.
Yeah, back to Moore real quick. I would say that the juxtaposition of a very personal, individual perspective in the lyric with the big anthemic rock show sound is one of the strengths of that song.
Yeah.
So love that. And Santos, yeah, you'll always remember where you were, but also it's a rocker. That's what you want to leave them on, right? You want to give them a big rocker to send them on the road, send them back to their hotel, to the party bus, to whatever it is you got going ahead of you to wrap up your Dick's weekend. And yeah, great closing to a really great tour.
Really great closing.
What else is there?
Well, I want to ask you just a couple really quick questions here to kind of put this all into perspective. So we've done a deep dive on the last 5 shows. And I want to thank everyone. We're an hour, 20 minutes into our shows that we originally set as, hey, let's do 20 to 30 minutes. But John, it's always great to deep dive this with you. I want to ask you, looking at the last 5 shows in isolation, is there a specific set from those last 5 shows that you find yourself returning to, or will be returning to?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not sure there's been the time to go back to most of these, and I'm going to have to do a lot of that. But I kind of think that I think the second set last night, as well as the probably the second sets from Shoreline, are my candidates. I'm not certain which one of these is the one. It might be the Lizards, Tweezer, Miss You, Piper 20 years later from Shoreline Night 2. I honestly, I don't know. It might be one of these great first sets, because they've been some really good first sets. The first night, Friday Night Dicks. I don't have a concrete answer for you today. Ask me again next week.
Yeah, we'll jump back into this.
But what about you? Do you have one?
I think either the second set from night 1 at Shoreline, or the first set from last night, the night 3 at Dick. I think those would be my candidates, as like, just press play, walk away, don't ever think about the next don't think about changing the music until the set is over, type of thing.
I think that the beauty is that there are so many of those kinds of sets right here that we're very lucky.
Absolutely. I think that we should probably decide, however, on what the jam of the week was. We have a lot to sift through here. I don't know if we've had this many deep 20+ minute jams to decipher throughout this tour. I mean, we've had a lot of jamming this tour, but do you have a pick for the jam of the week this week?
I'm going to be that guy and just say it's the Cities from Shoreline. I know you're like, oh, I'm ready to nominate something from Dick's. I was just at these 3 great shows, the big jams, and Jonathan's going to vote Shoreline, and there's nobody else here to back one of us up. So
there's nobody here. So I think I'm going to, by default, I think actually I'm going to go with your pick here, because while I think that there are bigger, longer jams, and as I noted earlier, I haven't gone back and re-listened to it, but what I do recall, and I think the reason why you're accurate here, is there's a moment as they're leaving Cities where Trey looks like he is in absolutely no rush to do anything other than play that groove. And that vibe is the reason why we got the Soul Planet, the Tweezer, Everything's Right, so on and so forth. It's whatever sounds, and I talked to Ryan from Trey's Guitar Rig about this yesterday, and we talked to Scott Marks about this as well. Whatever sounds they're playing with right now, new technology doesn't always work, and Fish is a band that will always be introducing new technology, and sometimes it messes with their performance and it messes with their playing. It has worked completely this summer, and watching him play that Cities, he hit whatever on his pedal board. It created that synthesizer sound that he's been playing with. And we're like deep in set one, playing the first city since 2019. And it was like, I don't have any place to go. I don't have anything else I want to do. I'm just going to groove on this. And then it led into a great jam that moved into passing through. So I think you're right. I think that even though it's not the longest jam, it sets up what makes the rest of the overall show so great and week so great.
Yeah, it's been. I said it last week. I'll say it again. An embarrassment of riches. We just got so much good stuff. I can't even fathom like this tour started in Arkansas, and there have been so many great jams. I don't know when I'm going to be able to properly ingest all of that. Almost like, especially given that we only have so much time before fall tour starts. Bummer.
Yeah, I feel like the next 6 weeks are going to be a lot of. It's always interesting to listen to a tour in the immediate history of it. Like it's one thing to if you and I could probably do this tomorrow and say we're going to talk about summer 2015, but you have 6 years of time to consider those jams, to consider where they fall. It's one thing to then like the month later go back and re-listen to so much of this music and hear things that you didn't pick up on the first time or the first two or three times that you heard it. And to start to hear like the tour as a proper arc from Arkansas through night three at Dick's, where we heard inspiration, where we heard moments where they pulled back, and where we heard like things that really worked in a new and unique way. And I think that when we look at this tour, I said at the top, we're going to see a tour that just jumped to high gear, no pun intended, almost immediately, stayed at that very strong level, but there was a very intentional pivot midway through the tour to reincorporate some songs, which can sometimes mess with the improvisation, but instead had the kind of alternative effect of forcing the band into new terrain for improvisation, which we heard starting at the Gorge and paid off really well here over the last 5 shows.
Yeah, I mean the shows are for the second half in particular, but the shows are really well balanced between
Yeah.
jams, big jams, micro jams, songs, ballads. They've each show has them all, and I think really well paced, good dosage of each. But as far as looking back and putting the tour in context, I think I'm only just now ready to put like Grateful Dead 1971 in context. So give me a few years before I try to figure out where this all fits.
Well, the good news is I think that this is a tour that we're going to be talking about for years to come. This falls for me in fall 2013 territory, summer 2015, Baker's Dozen, as some of the strongest Fish that we've heard since the reunion in 2009. And I would put it up with some
Yeah.
of my favorite tours of all time. I think that there was a lot of magic. There were a lot of really brilliant moments. And I think that come late September, come the end of the year, come 2022, we're going to look back on this tour and really be like, man, I would go back in time and see a show in summer 2021, even with all the health restrictions, even with all the issues going on nationally. That is a time that I would have wanted to be on tour.
Just wait till fall tour comes along and makes us forget all about the summer.
That would be a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, John. I know that you're hanging out today on a holiday. I want to thank you for taking some time here. This was such a pleasure to break down these last 5 shows with you, and it's been so awesome to do this over the last couple of weeks. We have a lot more coming. We are going to be doing these weekly shows coming out every Tuesday, every week between now and fall tour. We've got some really cool ideas kind of mixed up, both to look back and reflect on the summer tour as it was, plus I think some historical deep dives, just like nerd out on Fish in some ways as we will between tours.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of good stuff ahead, folks. So please keep tuned in.
Absolutely. And before we roll, just want to remind everybody that HF Pod on Tour is presented by Shift Genuine Cannabis. Thanks to everyone who entered the contest. Congratulations to Charles Weaver for winning the contest. You and a friend are going to Las Vegas. Fish's October 30th and 31st shows at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. Amazing place to see Fish. I'm very jealous of everyone who's going there.
I can't wait to get back there.
It's a great spot. I went in 2018, and if my children are just at the age where I can't skip a Halloween, so I'm going to do Phoenix through Santa Barbara and really enjoy those 4 shows. Um, More to come between HF Pod, between Osiris and Shift Genuine Cannabis, and then finally, huge shout out to Jambase, our media partner. Jambase does incredible work promoting Osiris Media and all the podcasts we do. And we absolutely love everybody at Jambase. Incredible one-stop shop for music news, great insights into the jam band world and beyond. So love you over at Jambase. Thank you so much for your love and support. And with that, I think that we've done it, man. We broke down the final week of summer tour.
Took us long enough.
Took us long enough. Thanks so much for hanging, John. This was awesome. I love doing this with you.
Yeah, it was a good time. Thanks, Brian.
Awesome. All right. We will see you all here live in a couple of weeks, although we may have a few moments where we sign on and do a few live shows scattered throughout the next month. But aside from that, check us out every Tuesday, HF Pod on the road, HF Pod on tour, I should say. See you, everyone.